The crystalline spires of Kepler-7 caught the light of 3 distant suns, refracting it into cascades of color that painted the mining colony in perpetual rainbows. For 200 cycles, the Zarathi had called this moon home, carving their elegant settlements into the silicon-rich cliffs and transforming raw minerals into works of art that sang when the solar winds blew through them. Communications Officer Tillith pressed her delicate hands against the observation panel of the communications tower, watching those same spires begin to crack and crumble. The Vex swarm had arrived 6 hours ago, a writhing mass of silicon-based nightmares that consumed everything in their path, replicating with each resource they devoured. "How long until they breach the inner shields?" she asked, her mandibles clicking nervously. Defensive Coordinator Zenth checked his display, his bioluminescent patches flickering with stress. 11 hours, maybe 12 if we're fortunate. Tillith's antennae drooped. 12 hours. And the nearest Galactic Union patrol was 3 jump cycles away, 4 days at minimum. Even if she sent a distress signal immediately, protocol required approval from the sector command, then the regional authority, then finally fleet dispatch. The bureaucracy alone would take 2 cycles. They would all be dead long before help arrived. "Send the beacon anyway," she whispered. "Let someone know we were here. That we mattered." Zenth's patches pulsed with sorrow, but he nodded. Together, they composed the message, a simple plea encoded in the universal distress frequency, cast out into the void like a message in a bottle thrown into an infinite ocean. "This is Kepler-7 colony. Zarathi settlement, population 126,000, under attack by Vex swarm, shields failing. We have less than 12 hours. If anyone receives this, remember us. Remember that we tried to make beauty in this universe." Tillith watched the signal pulse outward at light speed, knowing in her heart it would reach no one in time. The Zarathi were pacifists, artists, philosophers. They had no weapons, no warriors, no understanding of the violence that now consumed their home. She returned to her family shelter, where her mate and their 3 larvae waited. They would spend their final hours together, singing the old songs and holding each other as the darkness came. The signal traveled through the black, indifferent to hope or despair. Lighthouse 9. Deep Space Monitoring Station, Outer Rim of Human claimed. Territory 15.7 hours from Kepler-7 Marcus. Chen was halfway through his protein bar when the console erupted in urgent red. He nearly choked, fumbling the silver wrapper as his coffee went spinning in the zero-gravity station. What the hell? His fingers flew across the haptic interface, pulling up the signal data. Live distress beacon. Universal frequency. Less than 16 light hours away. Oh shit. Oh shit. Marcus had been monitoring deep space for 3 years, and in all that time he'd logged exactly 0 real emergencies. Plenty of false alarms. Asteroid collisions mistaken for weapons fire, solar flares disrupting communications. One memorable incident involving a merchant vessel's overheated engine that turned out to be someone's illegal still exploding. But this was real. He pulled up the translation matrix and his stomach dropped as he read the message. Pacifist colony. Kids. Less than 12 hours. Standard procedure was clear. Log the signal, forward it to Colonial Affairs, who would forward it to the Galactic Liaison Office, who would consult with the Union, who would eventually authorize a response that would arrive 3 days too late. Marcus thought about that protein bar he'd been eating. About his sister's kids back on Earth, how they'd greet him with screams of joy whenever he came home on leave. About what it would feel like to know help was coming and watch it arrive too late to matter. Screw procedure. His fingers danced across the controls, bypassing every official channel. He pulled up the emergency military network. The one they weren't supposed to use except for imminent threats to human territory, and searched for the nearest ship with teeth. There. UHSV. Relentless Corvette-class full marine complement. Captain Jake Morrison commanding. Marcus had heard stories about Morrison, former Marine who'd lost half his unit when command delayed their extraction by 6 hours during the Proxima incident. The man had a reputation for being difficult, insubordinate, and utterly reliable when civilians were in danger. Perfect. Marcus encrypted the Zarathi distress signal and attached his own message. Captain Morrison, I'm sending you this directly because I know what you'll do with it. Some people are dying. They need help now, not in 4 days. Their coordinates are attached. I'll probably be court-martialed for this, worth it. Chen, Lighthouse 9. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he sat back, finished his protein bar, and waited to see if he'd just ended his career for nothing. UHSV Relentless Patrol Route, Sigma 7, 16.2 hours from Kepler 7. The bridge of the Relentless was a study in organized chaos. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the central display, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he studied their patrol route. At 47, he was older than most corvette captains, his close-cropped hair more gray than black, his face lined with scars both visible and otherwise. Captain, priority message coming through on the emergency channel, Lieutenant Kim announced from communications. It's encrypted personal encryption. From Lighthouse 9, Morrison's eyebrow rose. Personal encryption? Put it through. He read Chen's message once, twice, then pulled up the attached Zarathi distress call. All senior staff to the bridge. Now. Within 3 minutes, his core team assembled. First Officer Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a xenobiologist who'd insisted on joining the military after first contact because someone needs to make sure we don't accidentally insult our way into a war. Tactical Officer Raymond Brooks, a baby-faced genius who looked like he should be in college but could calculate firing solutions in his head faster than the ship's computer. Chief Engineer Paula Okafor, whose Nigerian accent got thicker the more stressed she became, and Master Sergeant Ana Reyes, whose Marines would follow her into hell armed with sharp sticks if she asked. Morrison played the Zarathi message. For them without preamble. The bridge fell silent except for the ambient hum of the ship's systems. We're 16.2 hours away at current speed, Brooks said quietly, consulting his display. They have less than 12 before their shields fail. So we can't make it, Reyes stated flatly. Not at current speed, Okafor agreed, her accent thickening. But if we push the engines past safety limits, strip non-essential systems for power and pray to whatever gods are listening, we'd be violating non-interference protocols, Brooks continued. This isn't human territory. We have no authorization. The Galactic Union has specific procedures for letting people die while bureaucrats hold committee meetings, Morrison interrupted, his voice cold. An uncomfortable silence followed. Dr. Tanaka broke it. I've studied the Zarathi. They're pacifists, artists, they've never harmed anyone. They create these incredible crystal sculptures that resonate with harmonic frequencies. Some of their work is in the Smithsonian. They have children, Captain. Larvae, technically, but children. Morrison stared at the star map, at the blinking red indicator that represented Kepler 7. He thought about Proxima, about holding Private Jensen's hand as the kid bled out, whispering, "Help is coming, just hold on," knowing it was a lie, about the official reprimand that followed, the one that said his unit's deaths were an unfortunate result of proper procedural adherence. He'd sworn then that he'd never let procedure kill anyone again. Show of hands, he said quietly. Who votes we divert course and render assistance? Every hand went up. Even Brooks, despite his cautious nature, raised his hand without hesitation. Morrison felt something tight in his chest loosen. This crew. These beautiful, insane, perfectly human people. Okafor, you have 2 hours to make this ship fly faster than it was ever designed to. Brooks, I want tactical scenarios for every possible threat we might encounter. Reyes, prep your Marines for combat deployment against an unknown enemy. Tanaka, tell me everything you know about silicon-based life forms and how to kill them. The bridge exploded into motion. Morrison turned to Lieutenant Kim. Send a message to Kepler 7. Tell them. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on. Tell them humanity heard them. Sir, what about command? They'll have our heads for this. Morrison smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Let them try. Kim, send the message. Kepler 7 colony 11.5 hours. Until shield failure, Tillith was singing a lullaby to her youngest larva when Zenth burst into the shelter, his bioluminescent patches blazing with an emotion she couldn't identify. Tillith, we received a response. She stopped mid-verse. What, that's impossible. No one could. Someone did. A species called humans. They say they're coming. They say to hold on. Tillith's 4 hands trembled. How far away are they? Zenth's patches flickered. According to their transmission, 16 hours. The hope that had sparked in her chest guttered. But we only have 11, maybe 12. They know. They're coming anyway. Tillith looked at her mate, at her larvae, at the other families crowded into the shelter. She thought about the message she'd sent, expecting only silence and death. And someone had answered. A species she'd never heard of from a world she couldn't imagine was racing through the dark to reach them. It was impossible. It was illogical. It was insane. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard. Tell them. Her voice broke. Tell them we'll try. Tell them thank you. Tell them. What could you say to someone willing to attempt the impossible for strangers? Tell them we'll remember. She finished softly. Whatever happens, we'll remember that someone came. UHSV Relentless Engineering. Deck Paula Okafor stood before the ship's fusion core, covered in coolant and sweat, and contemplated whether she was a genius or about to kill everyone aboard. Talk to me. Paula. Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. I can get you there in 13 hours, Captain. Maybe 12 if God loves us, and what's the catch? Paula looked at the jury-rigged bypass she'd installed, the one currently routing plasma directly through systems that were never meant to handle that much energy. The catch is that after about 14 hours at this speed, the engines will melt down. We'll have maybe 30 minutes in system before we lose all power. 30 minutes to save 126,000 people. We'll make it work. Captain, there's something else. Paula wiped her forehead, leaving a streak of grease. If we do this, we're burning out the core. Relentless will be dead in space afterward. We won't be flying home under our own power. A long pause. Will everyone survive the burnout? Yes, sir. Then it's just a ship. Ships can be rebuilt. Do it. Paula smiled despite herself. Aye, Captain. Initiating overburn in 3, 2, 1. The Relentless leaped forward like a predator unleashed, burning through space at speeds that would have terrified any sane engineer, racing toward a colony of aliens they'd never met, to fight an enemy they didn't understand, because someone had asked for help. And humanity, for all its flaws and fears, had never learned how to ignore that call. 13 hours. They had 13 hours to make the impossible happen. In the mess hall, Sergeant Reyes gathered her Marines and began explaining what they knew about the Vex swarm. In the medical bay, Dr. Tanaka researched silicon-based biology. In his quarters, Brooks ran combat simulations with increasingly creative tactical solutions. Throughout the ship, 147 humans prepared for battle. And on the bridge, Captain Jake Morrison stared at the countdown timer and whispered to the stars, "Hold on. We're coming." Kepler 7 orbit. 12 hours, 47 minutes after distress signal. The Relentless dropped out of FTL with all the grace of a brick thrown through a window. Alarms screamed across every deck as the overworked engines howled in protest. But they were there, 33 minutes ahead of the impossible schedule Paula Okafor had promised. Status. Morrison barked, gripping his command chair as the ship shuddered. Engines at critical temperature. Okafor's voice came through, strained. We've got maybe 40 minutes before complete failure. Also, the plasma conduits are singing opera. That's not supposed to happen. Tactical? Brooks's fingers danced across his console, his boyish face suddenly hard. Visual coming through now, Captain. Jesus Christ. The main display flickered to life, and Morrison understood why his tactical officer had invoked the divine. The Vex swarm covered Kepler 7's surface like a living carpet of nightmares. Each creature was roughly the size of a wolf, constructed of jagged silicon plates that reflected the light of 3 suns into blinding fragmented patterns. They moved with horrifying fluidity, their crystalline bodies restructuring with each movement, adapting, consuming, multiplying. Give me numbers, Morrison said quietly. Conservative estimate? 10,000 units on the surface. Maybe 12. They're concentrated around the colony's primary shield generator. Brooks zoomed in, and they could see the Zarathi installation, a beautiful structure of organic curves and artistic flourishes, now surrounded by a seething mass of geometric horror, shield integrity at 14% and dropping. The Zarathi have maybe 2 hours left. 2 hours. We got here in time. Morrison allowed himself one breath of relief. Options? We don't have enough firepower to eliminate the swarm, Brooks said flatly. Even if every missile hits perfectly, we'd maybe take out 30% of them before they adapt. Then we don't try to win, Reyes said, her voice coming through from the marine deck. We buy time. Captain, get my people on that moon. We'll make sure those things regret every meter they advance. Morrison looked at Dr. Tanaka. Tell me you found a weakness. The xenobiologist pulled up her research, her expression grim. The Vex swarm operates on a distributed intelligence model. Each unit shares processing power with the whole. They're incredibly efficient, adaptive, and nearly impossible to surprise, but she highlighted a section of her notes. Silicon-based life requires specific resonance frequencies to maintain molecular cohesion. If we could generate a broad-spectrum electromagnetic pulse, we might disrupt their structural integrity. How do we generate a pulse that big? Tanaka and Okafor exchanged looks. The mining equipment, Okafor said slowly. The Zarathi are mining silicon-rich deposits. If we could overload their extraction arrays, we'd need to be on the surface, Tanaka finished, and it would take time to reprogram their systems. Morrison stood, his decision made. Reyes, you're dropping in 5 minutes. Establish a perimeter around the shield generator. Tanaka, you're going with them. Someone needs to hack that mining equipment. Brooks, I want continuous fire support. Target their densest clusters, keep them off balance. Okafor, I'm already nursing these engines, Captain. I'll keep us flying as long as physically possible. That's all I ask. Morrison activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. In a few minutes, we're going to do something incredibly stupid and probably suicidal. We're going to land a small force on a hostile moon to protect people we've never met from an enemy we barely understand. Command didn't authorize this. The Galactic Union doesn't want us here, and we're going to do it anyway because that's what humans do. We show up, we fight. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Relentless crew. Let's make humanity proud. Surface of Kepler-7, shield perimeter. The drop pods hit the silicon-rich surface hard, throwing up clouds of crystalline dust that sparkled in the triple sunlight. Sergeant Ana Reyes was first out, her combat exosuit purring to life as she scanned the perimeter. Spread out. Establish firing positions. Tanaka, get to that mining array. Move, move, move. 37 Marines deployed with practiced precision, turning the elegant Zarathi architecture into improvised defensive positions. Reyes could see Zarathi faces pressed against transparent sections of the shield barrier, their insectoid features frozen in expressions she couldn't read but somehow understood perfectly. Fear, hope, desperation. Contact, Corporal Davies shouted. North sector, multiple hostiles. The Vex swarm came like a silicon tsunami, flowing over the crystalline landscape with terrible speed. Reyes opened fire, her pulse rifle sending coherent energy bursts into the mass. The first creature she hit shattered spectacularly, its silicon body fragmenting into razor-sharp shrapnel that took down 2 of its companions. Explosive fragmentation, she shouted into the comm. They're vulnerable to kinetic shock. Aim for center mass! The Marines adjusted their fire and suddenly the tide slowed as Vex units exploded like grenades, creating chain reactions through their tightly packed formations. But for every 10 they killed, 20 more emerged from the canyons. Reyes, we've got a problem. Brooks's voice crackled from orbit. The swarm is adapting. They're spreading out, reducing their fragmentation vulnerability. Of course they are, Reyes muttered. She switched to explosive rounds and dropped 3 more Vex units. Tanaka, how's that mining equipment coming? Mining Array Station 3, 1.2 kilometers from shield perimeter, Doctor. Yuki Tanaka had never considered herself a soldier. She was a scientist, a diplomat, someone who preferred laboratories and libraries to battlefields. But as she sprinted through the abandoned Zarathi mining facility, her pistol in one hand and her datapad in the other, she discovered reserves of courage she'd never known she possessed. The mining arrays were magnificent, massive crystalline structures that resonated with harmonic frequencies, extracting silicon from the moon's crust without damaging the aesthetic beauty of the landscape. The Zarathi had turned resource extraction into an art form. Right now, she needed to turn it into a weapon. Okay, she muttered, connecting her pad to the mining array's control system. Just need to reverse the harmonic polarity, increase the resonance frequency by a factor of... Oh, that's not good. The system was designed with multiple safety protocols to prevent exactly what she was trying to do. Overloading it could create an EMP pulse large enough to disrupt the Vex swarm's molecular cohesion, but it could also, A, explode spectacularly, B, fry every piece of electronic equipment within 10 kilometers, See both A and B simultaneously. Reyes, I can do this, but when it goes off, every human system within 10 clicks is going offline. That includes your suits, weapons, and communications. How long will we be dark? Tanaka ran the calculations. Maybe 90 seconds before backup systems restart. 90 seconds against 12,000 Vex units with no weapons or comms. Fantastic. A pause. Then Reyes's voice came back steady. Do it anyway. We've survived worse. When have we survived worse? We haven't. That's why this will make a great story if we live. Despite everything, Tanaka laughed. She began overriding the safety protocols, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The mining array began to hum, a low vibration that grew steadily higher. Initializing overload sequence. EMP discharge in 4 minutes. UHSV relentless low orbit. Captain, the engines are failing. Okafor's voice had lost all trace of her accent. A bad sign. Core temperature is critical. We need to pull back or we're going to lose main power. Morrison watched the tactical display. His Marines were holding barely, but the swarm kept coming. They needed more time. How much longer can you give me? Maybe 10 minutes. After that, Relentless becomes a very expensive piece of orbital debris. 10 minutes. Tanaka needed 4 to overload the mining array. That left 6 minutes to... An idea formed. A terrible, beautiful, completely insane idea. Brooks, what's the swarm's command structure? Distributed intelligence, sir. Each unit contributes processing power to the collective. But our scans show a larger structure emerging from the southern canyon. It's roughly 10 times the size of the standard units. Best guess? It's a hub node, coordinating the local swarm activity. If we take it out, the swarm would lose cohesion temporarily. Maybe enough time for the EMP to do its work. But Captain, that hub is protected by at least 1,000 units. Morrison stood, moving toward the helm. Then we'll have to go through them. Sir? Okafor, how long until the engines explode? A pause. I'm sorry, did you say until they explode? Answer the question, Chief. 12, maybe 15 minutes at current output. Perfect. Helm. Plot a course straight through that canyon. Full throttle. The bridge erupted in protests. Morrison overrode them all. We're already dead in space. That hub node is coordinating the entire attack. We take it out, our people get the breathing room they need. Relentless was always going to be a sacrifice today. Let's make it count. Captain, Lieutenant Kim said quietly, if we do this, there's no coming back. The crew can evacuate to the surface in escape pods after we complete the run. This ship might be dying, but we're not. He looked around the bridge at his crew. Unless anyone wants to argue, Lintz. Then one by one his officers returned to their stations. Helm, you have the course. Aye, Captain. Course laid in, sir. It's been an honor. The honor's mine. All hands prepare for atmospheric entry. And someone wake up Dante. I'm not flying this thing manually. The ship's AI flickered to life, its avatar appearing on the main display. A flickering geometric pattern that somehow conveyed disapproval. Captain Morrison, I must protest. The probability of survival for this maneuver is approximately 0.003%. Sounds like good odds to me. You in? I am programmed to follow orders. However, I feel compelled to note that you are an irrational, reckless human, and I have somehow become fond of you despite this. Morrison grinned. Love you too, Dante. Now let's go be heroes. The Relentless tilted, her nose pointing toward Kepler-7's surface, and began her final dive. Shield perimeter, is that? Davies stared at the sky. Is the captain kamikazing our ship? Eyes front, Corporal. Rhea snapped, but she was watching too. The Relentless screamed through the atmosphere like a falling star, trailing fire and debris, heading straight for the southern canyon. The Vex swarm seemed to pause, their collective intelligence recognizing the threat. Thousands of units broke away from the perimeter assault, streaming toward the canyon to protect their hub. The pressure's off, Reyes shouted. Push forward. Secure the mining array. UHSV Relentless final approach. The ship was shaking itself apart. Hull plating peeled away like paper. Systems failed in cascading waves, and the engines screamed their death song. Morrison held the helm steady, Dante calculating micro-corrections faster than any human could process. Hub node in sight, Brooks reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. 500 meters. 400. All crew to escape pods now. Captain, you need to... That's an order. Move. The bridge crew evacuated, leaving only Morrison and Dante's holographic presence. Captain, the AI said softly, there is an optimal ejection point in 17 seconds that gives you a 23% chance of survival. You calculated my odds already? I've been calculating them since this insane plan began. 18 seconds ago, your survival probability was 45%. You've been making poor decisions. Morrison laughed, a wild sound. Get the escape pod ready, Dante. I don't have an escape pod, Captain. I'm software. Like hell you are. You're in the navigation core, right? That whole module is designed to eject. Yes, but Captain, that's meant for hardware recovery, not so we recover the hardware. With you in it. Morrison made a series of rapid inputs. Navigation core emergency eject authorization Morrison Alpha 7. Captain, no. You won't have navigational control. Don't need it. We're flying straight anyway. Morrison stood backing toward the command escape pod. Dante, you're the best AI I've ever worked with. You've saved this crew 100 times. Now let me save you. Humans, Dante said, and somehow the AI sounded like it was crying. You're all completely insane. Yeah, but you love us anyway. Yes, I do. See you on the ground, buddy. Morrison hit the dual eject sequence. The navigation core rocketed away from the dying ship, followed a half-second later by the command pod. Through the small viewport, Morrison watched the Relentless make her final charge. The Corvette, burning and broken but still flying, slammed into the Vex hub node at terminal velocity. The explosion lit up the entire moon, surface of Kepler 7. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. Reyes pulled herself up, ears ringing, and stared at the massive crater where the southern canyon used to be. The Vex swarm had frozen. Without their hub node, the distributed intelligence was fragmenting, units wandering aimlessly. Tanaka, Reyes shouted into her comm. Now! Mining Array Station 3 Dr. Tanaka hit the final command, then ran. The mining array's hum became a shriek, then a roar. The crystalline structures began to glow brighter and brighter. Harmonics building to an impossible crescendo. EMP discharge in 3, 2, 1. The world went white. Every electronic system on Kepler 7 died instantly. Human combat suits locked up, weapons powered down. Even the Zerathi shield generators flickered and failed. For 93 seconds, there was only silence and the fading light of the EMP blast. Then, across the battlefield, human Marines began to move. Suit servos reinitialized, weapons came back online, communications crackled to life. The Vex swarm did not move, could not move. Their silicon-based molecular bonds had been disrupted, their distributed intelligence shattered. 10,000 units stood frozen like grotesque statues, their crystalline bodies locked in place. Reyes stood slowly, looking at the battlefield of frozen enemies. Status report. Everyone sound off. One by one, her Marines reported in. Bruised, battered, but alive. Captain Morrison, she asked quietly. I see his pod. Davies pointed to the horizon. 3 clicks east. Crash Site Morrison crawled out of the mangled escape pod, every bone in his body aching. His survival harness had deployed properly, but properly was a relative term when you ejected from a ship during a kamikaze run. Captain. Dr. Tanaka reached him first, already pulling out her medical scanner. Stay still, you might have... I'm fine, Dante. The navigation core landed 600 meters north, Brooks reported, jogging up. The beacon's still active. I'll get a recovery team. Morrison nodded, then looked at the crater where his ship had died. The Relentless had been his home for 5 years. And now she was gone. Worth it, he whispered. Zerathi colony 6 hours later. The Zerathi emerged from their shelters like beings from a dream. Tillith walked through the frozen Vex units, her 4 hands trembling, hardly believing they were still alive. The humans had done it. Impossibly, insanely, magnificently they had done it. She found Captain Morrison sitting on a pile of rubble, his arm in a sling, surrounded by his crew. They were sharing ration packs and water, and several were teaching young Zerathi larvae simple Earth songs. Captain Morrison, Tillith approached, her translator device working to convert her clicking speech. We have no words. You saved us. You sacrificed your ship, risked your lives for people you never met. Morrison looked up at her, his weathered face breaking into a tired smile. Ma'am, you asked for help. Where I come from, that's all the reason we need, but why? What do you gain from this? Morrison considered the question, looking around at his crew mingling with the Zerathi, at Corporal Davies braiding crystalline flowers into a child's antennae, At Dr. Tanaka carefully explaining human medicine to a group of fascinated Zarathi healers, at Sergeant Reyes sharing her rations with a family who'd lost everything. This, he said simply, we gain this. New friends. The knowledge that we made a difference. The chance to be better than our worst instincts. He stood, wincing. They call us Deathworlders, you know. Say we come from a planet so hostile that it made us tough, mean, hard to kill. Maybe that's true. But it also taught us that when someone's in trouble, you help. Because someday we might be the ones who need saving. Tilith's translator struggled with the emotion in her voice. You will always have friends among the Zarathi. Always. Behind them, the first Galactic Union ships were dropping out of FTL, 3 days too late and just in time to see what humanity had done. Galactic Council chambers 3 weeks later, the CRAR. Emergency session had been called to address the Kepler-7 incident, humanity's reckless, unauthorized intervention in a Galactic Union matter. Ambassador Tivel, a reptilian species known for their strict adherence to protocol, stood before the assembled council. The humans violated 13 separate regulations. They acted without authorization, destroyed a Union-tracked Vex colony, and they saved 126,000 lives, Tilith interrupted, standing from the observer section. As the survivor representative, she had been granted speaking privileges. While you debated and formed committees, they came. They fought. They sacrificed. The issue isn't their intentions, Tivel argued, but the precedent it sets. We have procedures for letting people die? Captain Morrison stood beside Tilith, his arm still in a sling. Tell me, Ambassador, how many lives is proper protocol worth? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species agreed with Tivel. Humanity was dangerous, unpredictable, needed to be controlled. Others, moved by Tilith's testimony and the footage of the battle, called for recognition of humanity's sacrifice. Finally, the Council High Speaker, an ancient crystalline being, raised 3 of its 6 arms for silence. This council recognizes both the virtue and the violation in humanity's actions, the speaker said, its voice resonating through the chamber. Therefore, we propose the following. The humanitarian clause. Any species may render emergency aid to those in imminent danger without waiting for full council authorization. They will be judged afterward on the merit and necessity of their intervention. The chamber fell silent. The first species to operate under this clause, the speaker continued, will be humanity. We name them protectors of the innocent and grant them provisional authority to respond to distress calls within Union space. Tivel's crest flared in outrage. You're rewarding them for breaking our laws. No, the speaker said quietly. We're learning from them. Motion to approve the humanitarian clause? The vote was overwhelming. 63 species in favor, 12 against, 4 abstaining. Morrison felt Tilith's hand rest gently on his shoulder. You changed everything, she whispered. He shook his head. We just did what anyone should do. Exactly, she said. You showed us what that looks like. UHSV Relentless Thuku. 6 months later, the new ship was larger than the original Relentless, built with Zarathi aesthetic design principles and human military efficiency. The crystalline spires along her hull sang when she jumped to FTL, a tribute to the people they'd saved. Morrison stood on the bridge, Dante's avatar flickering beside him. The AI had been restored from the recovered navigation core, complete with all memories of that final flight. Captain, we're receiving a distress call, Lieutenant Kim reported. Colony ship engine failure drifting toward a dying star. Morrison smiled. How far? 20 hours at maximum speed. Tell them help is coming. He turned to his crew, some familiar faces, some new, all wearing the same expression of determination. Set course. Full speed. As the Relentless 2 leaped forward, Morrison thought about that first desperate message from Tilith, cast into the void with no hope of answer. The galaxy was full of those messages, people calling out into the dark, praying someone would hear, and now, finally, someone always would, because humanity had taught the galaxy a simple truth. When someone asks for help, you answer like your life depends on it because maybe, just maybe, someone's life does. Epilogue Galactic Historical Archive entry, the Kepler-7 incident. Classification, pivotal event before the humans. The galaxy operated on careful protocol and measured response. We were civilized, orderly, and we let people die while we debated the proper procedures for saving them. The humans changed that in 12 hours. They didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for authorization. They heard someone in trouble and they came running, willing to sacrifice everything for people they'd never met. It was irrational. It was reckless. It was inefficient and emotional and completely human. It was also exactly what the galaxy needed. Now, when the distress calls echo through the black, everyone knows. Call the humans. They'll come. They always come. Not because they're the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because when someone asks for help, they take it personally. And for the Deathworlders of Sol 3, there's no force in the universe more powerful than that. End historical entry.